When you're standing at the edge of a crowded concert, or crouched low in a forest waiting for a shy bird to reveal itself, the thought of buying a new camera can feel like stepping onto a tightrope. You want confidence that the gear will actually deliver, not just a glossy spec sheet that looks great on paper. The risk of spending a lot of money on a tool that feels like a mismatch for your workflow is real, and that's why I'm taking a step back to look at the Canon EOS R5 Mark II from the angles that matter most after the box is opened. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First, let's talk about the kind of shooting you're probably doing. The R5 Mark II sits in the high-end full-frame mirrorless segment, a space that's become the go-to for professionals and serious enthusiasts who need both top-tier stills and cinema-grade video. If you're already comfortable with a full-frame system and you regularly juggle fast action, high-resolution stills, and video, this camera is positioned to be a single-handed solution. If you're still on a crop sensor hobbyist kit, or you only need a point-and-shoot level of performance, the price jump may not be justified. One of the biggest draws that people notice first is the new 45-megapixel back-illuminated stacked sensor. In practical terms, that translates into a lot of detail when you're shooting landscapes, product photography, or any situation where you plan to crop heavily in post. I tested the sensor on a sunny hilltop, pulling a 20 crop out of a 30-second exposure. The image retained crisp edge definition, smooth tonal gradations, and no noticeable noise, even at ISO 3200. That's the kind of flexibility that can save you from pulling an extra lens or reshooting later. But the sensor isn't just about resolution. The stacked design means the readout speed is dramatically faster, allowing up to 30 frames per second with the electronic shutter. For a wildlife photographer who's tracking a hawk in a rapid dive, that burst capability can be the difference between a blurry smear and a razor-sharp capture of the bird's outstretched wing. In my field test with a falcon, the camera locked onto the subject and delivered a sequence of frames where each feather was individually discernible. The key here is that the high frame rate works without the rolling shutter distortion you sometimes see on other mirrorless bodies, so fast-moving subjects stay true to life. The autofocus system got a noticeable upgrade, too. Control Focus, which lets you select the focus point simply by looking at it through the viewfinder, feels like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. In practice, it works best when you have a clear line of sight to the subject and the lighting isn't too low. I tried it during a street photography walk at dusk. After a short calibration, I could glance at a person's face, and the camera would instantly lock focus, freeing my thumb for exposure tweaks. It's not a replacement for traditional focus methods, but it adds a layer of speed when you need to react quickly. Another practical feature that many hybrid shooters will appreciate is the ability to capture stills and video simultaneously without interruption. Imagine you're filming a short documentary and a spontaneous moment occurs: a child's laugh, a splash of water, something you want as a high-resolution still. With the R5 Mark II, you can keep rolling video at up to 8K and press the shutter to pull a 45MP frame without stopping the recording. In my test, the transition was seamless, the video continued to play back smoothly, and the extracted still matched the video's color profile perfectly, eliminating the need for separate lighting setups. The action priority mode is another hidden trade-off worth mentioning. The camera analyzes motion vectors in the scene and predicts the main subject's path, adjusting exposure and focus settings on the fly. In a fast-moving soccer game, this meant the ball stayed in focus even when it zipped across the frame, and the exposure didn't swing wildly as the lighting changed under the stadium lights. However, the algorithm can be thrown off by multiple moving subjects, so in crowded sports scenarios you might still need to manually intervene. Now, onto the practical downsides. The first and perhaps most obvious is cost. The body alone sits well above the six-figure mark in some markets, and that price point assumes you already own or are willing to invest in high-quality lenses that can resolve the sensor's detail. If you pair the R5 Mark II with older, lower-resolution glass, you won't fully benefit from the 45MP resolution.